Hello and welcome to my channel, Every Last One, where I combat my crippling loneliness of middle age by talking to my phone about my vinyl collection. I'm super excited for today's video, and hopefully YouTube will be too, judging by the traffic to my recent Cure ranking videos. Hollywood believes in the safe bet of a good sequel, so let's try this out. Today's video is one for the algorithm. I'm selling out with another ranking video. Today, I am ranking the albums of Depeche Mode from worst to best. This ranking is going to contain all 15 original studio albums, so no catching up, no 101. I first started listening to Depeche Mode around the age of 12. Back then, my brain was mostly fixated on the bland pop music of the time until I serendipitously discovered them. More on that story later. I couldn't pronounce the name of the band, but the sounds I heard completely opened up my mind to new emotions and fresh ideas on what music could sound like, eventually inspiring me to create my own music. Over the decades, I've continued to listen to their catalog, see their tours, and grapple with an unhealthy obsession with their merchandise, particularly vinyl records. Couple points before we begin. This list is based on my own personal enjoyment with their music. Obviously, lists like this are entirely subjective and yours might be different, and that's okay. If I'm a little harsh or critical here and there, it's driven by my love for how incredible this band can be at their best. Finally, if you're a fan that thinks you know every last Depeche detail, including Martin's shoe size, stick around to the end because I'm sure to have some neat tidbits and obscure facts along the way. Okay, let's do this. Number 15, Spirit. Released in 2017, produced by Simian Mobile Disco's James Ford, I find this tends to be at the bottom of most fans' lists, and for good reason. As far as a late period DM album goes, the songwriting and the production are pretty mediocre here, save for a few exceptions. Where's the Revolution could almost be good, but it's way too plodding and lets the chorus do the heavy lifting without any memorable melodies. This became a regular occurrence on later period DM where the music would hover around about 100 BPM and the bass and the synths would basically just back up the vocals but not really leap out with any unique elements, leading to fans coining the term demo mode. My top 3 tracks here are Going Backwards, which serves as a solid opener that introduces the album's themes as it builds continuously. Of the tracks that Dave has written, Cover Me is one of his best and has some nice Bowie-esque Interstellar vibes at the beginning, and the cinematic closing section brings in some fantastic orchestral elements over a bluesy slide guitar and stomp reminiscent of the classic track Clean. I'm surprised not many people talk about the track Scum. For me, it's the freshest, most vital track here. I think a lot of people might be put off by the rushed vocal delivery of "Hey Scum, hey Scum," but the beat is raw, the synths are snarling, and there's this mournful string pad hanging in the back that is just like vintage Black Celebration. They really should have rocked this one out live. So this is the 2017 pressing. It's a gatefold. Inner sleeve 1, inner sleeve 2. Both discs are on black vinyl. Number 14, Exciter. Another album that gets ragged on a lot by fans, and I can see why. Produced by LFO's Mark Bell, rest his soul, off the incredible work he had done with Bjork on Homogenic, this album is Depeche Mode at their softest and gentlest, but also most meandering. Martin was, as usual, feeling pressure and going through a bout of writer's block. Still living in the UK, his wife at the time returned from a fortune teller with the premonition that they'd be moving to California, from which Martin replied, "Dream on." After Martin started working with Paul Freegard and Gareth Jones on some pre-production at the Rack Studios in London, things would improve, and eventually Martin started regaining his confidence. Having embraced changes with his songwriting process, he would also embrace a change in residence, moving to Santa Barbara, California, prophecy fulfilled, and writing the album's first single, Dream On. Exciter suffers from a few things, the first being the bloat of CD era excess. Of the 13 tracks, there are 10 that are solid here. It doesn't need the plodding instrumentals. The Martin sung tracks are some of the worst, but Breathe and Ill-Advised Retread takes the award for the worst penned lyric, listing off a cringeworthy, rambling list of people's names expressed far more eloquently on a previous classic. Martin, why couldn't you have left the things you said alone? For me, the album shines, see what I did there, in its gentler moments. My top 3 tracks would be the moody and serene Shine, the tender double punch of When the Body Speaks, and closer, Goodnight Lovers. This is the 2017 repress. It's very, very glossy. It's a gatefold, inner sleeve. Number 13. Delta Machine. Released in 2013, this is the last of the Ben Hillier produced trilogy, and for me, the weakest of the 3. In terms of sonics, the band were going for this marriage of dark, brooding, mechanical electronics merged with the blues of the Deep South, hence the title Delta Machine. The end result, while upbeat and almost anthemic on some songs, ends up being a far cry from what this album could have been. Tragically, the original demos tell a story of a far more melodic and danceable sound during its inception. If you go on YouTube, you can hear the incredible Secret to the End, among others. For me, this album's best moments are the demo for All That's Mine, a track that was relegated to a B-side to the single Heaven and added as a bonus track on the deluxe edition of Delta Machine. Google it, seriously. All That's Mine demo is pure vintage mode, and not enough fans got to hear it. So what about what made it on the record? Well, hands down, the standout is Broken, sounding like a holdover from Music for the Masses with a truly anthemic chorus. Should Be Higher is a nice, dark, and sleazy track, sounding musically like an updated version of Lie to Me, with Dave testing his vocal range. Alone is a surprise, dark and angry, some lovely strings and shimmering melodies over an aggressive, overdriven rhythm that builds as the song progresses. Deluxe edition CD, with a lot of photos. 2013 vinyl. It's a gatefold, disc 1, disc 2. Coming in at number 12, I have Sounds of the Universe. Released in 2009, the second of the Ben Hillier produced albums, this was marketed at the time as Depeche Mode returning to their electronic roots. The title was supposed to be this sort of reference to the myriad of synths and electronic gear that Martin was buying up off of eBay and filling his Santa Barbara studio with, documented in the extensive footage that accompanies the lavish box set. As a veteran electronic musician, let me reinforce, all the gear in the world a great album does not make. It's the artist, not the paintbrush. For me, there are some nice highs on this album, but some equal lows. In Chains is classic DM. It wouldn't have been out of place on Songs of Faith and Devotion. Its anthemic themes and highs are in line with tracks like In Your Room. However, again, with so much later period Depeche, a classic song is marred by weak production and arrangement. Clearly its vibes resonated with Alan Wilder, who's gone on record to declare In Your Room to be his favorite song that he'd ever worked on with the Mode, up there with Walking in My Shoes. He would go on to cement his legacy on the group's production with the mic drop that is his remix, delivered on the Remixes 2, 81 to 11. Listen to Al's version, raising the song to the heights of Songs of Faith and Devotion, and now imagine the possibilities of what could have been on songs like In Sympathy or Perfect. If you check out the demos that accompany the deluxe edition, particularly the song Peace, you notice how little they progressed from the demo to the final version. And the less said about the disaster that is Hold to Feed and its accompanying video, the better. The bonus track Ghost really should have been included on the record, but from what did, for me, In Chains and the closing tracks Jezebel and Corrupt come off the strongest here. Deluxe 2 CD. Ridiculously over the top box set. 2009 vinyl pressing. It's a gatefold. First LP, second LP. oddly comes with a additional CD copy in the vinyl, as if I don't have enough copies of Sounds of the Universe on CD already. At number 11, I have Playing the Angel. Released in 2005, this album was a breath of fresh air. What a comeback after the mellow and meandering Exciter. This album is anthemic, stacked with strong dance floor tunes and hit singles. Precious would be their first hit since probably as far back as 1997's It's No Good. Chosen for the work he did on Blur's Think Tank album, Ben Hillier would shake things up and also bring back some edge to the Mode sound. Unlike on Exciter, Martin was in the zone, having a stack of incredible songs at the demo stage to choose from. Initially, they had planned to go with the song Martyr as the album's lead single, but eventually deemed it too poppy, so they held it back for inclusion on the Best of compilation in 2006. Even Dave got in the spirit, for the first time contributing 3 songs to the album's track list, including the tremendous Suffer Well, his best tune up there with Before We Drown. Ben Hillier recalls Martin performing the song's signature riff on a 6-string bass in one take. Really don't know about that Simlish version though. The Darkest Star oscillates between some of Martin's classic minor key piano chords and these blasts of bass notes and dark cinematic brilliance. The B-side Memphisto comes to mind here. This is an underrated album closer. Playing the Angel CD, 2005 vinyl, gatefold, some really nice Anton art there, LP1, LP2. Coming in hot at number 10, Memento Mori. So here we are, the Mode's most recent album, and yes, for me, it's their best in the past 25 years. Returning to work with James Ford, but this time including the brilliant Marta Solani, who would bring some incredible work with these tape loops, adding terrific layering and fresh perspective on several of the tracks. The album's production shines well above anything the band have done in the 2000s. The album was started coming out of COVID with themes of death being ever present within the songs both Dave and Martin were writing at the time, given the pandemic, the state of unrest in the world, and facing their own mortality. After Andy Fletcher's tragic passing in May of 2022, Martin was quoted as saying, "For me, when Andy died, it cemented the idea that we had to carry on with these songs and the title. The idea that we should all be making the most of our time on Earth, and it's very limited. It's kind of an important message, and it's even more important now that Andy's gone." Memento Mori is stacked with incredible songs, including co-writes with Richard Butler from the Psychedelic Furs, such as the brilliant first single, Ghosts Again. Along with it, Don't Say You Love Me, Never Let Me Go, People Are Good are also brilliant. Before We Drown is Dave's best song since Suffer Well, and I'm so happy it got the single, remix, and live performance treatment it deserved, even though to this day the chorus of the song is forever linked in my brain to the Adam Ant song Wonderful. Does anyone remember that forgotten gem? 2023 vinyl. This one is a double gatefold LP1 on clear vinyl. LP2, Anton at his blurriest. There's an etching on the 4th side. Fold out poster. Limited edition opaque red vinyl. Limited edition clear red vinyl, orderable from the band's website. Coming in at number 9, Ultra. And then there were 3 again. For the record, I go back and forth between this and Memento Mori. The margin is razor thin in my ranking. Released in 1997, I remember the vibe of this record just feeling so dour the first time I listened to it. With the exception of 2-3 tracks, there's a lot of pain and open wounds on display here, and a lot of slow moving atmospherics, particularly in the second half. After Alan's departure and Dave's initial recovery, Martin had 3 songs on demo for them to work on: Useless, Insight, and Sister of Night. Daniel Miller reckoned that if they could survive Vince leaving, they could survive Alan leaving. He suggested they take these songs and try to put them together into some sort of like an EP, see how it goes. They recruited mute musician Tim Simonon of Bomb the Bass to step in as producer, and he brought with him his team of 3 people to engineer, play keys, and so on. Gareth Jones would also be enlisted to help with mixing and engineering. And so would begin an era where the focus moved away from Depeche Mode the band to Depeche Mode the brand, with music generated by Coalition. Look at the credits in the liner notes to Ultra. Seriously, there's like 28 people listed there besides the band involved with the production. Clearly they were throwing everything at this project in hopes that something would succeed. Dave, for his part, was still struggling with getting clean, but after weeks of effort would deliver a brilliant vocal take on the track Sister of Night. After that 6-week stint in New York, the band reconvened to LA to continue, only to discover Dave had just OD'd. So with that, Dave got charged, threatened with being deported out of the US, and then finally, with all of that, he just started focusing really hard on getting clean and back to work. They would finish off the album, get the vocals finished, and the album would get released. Although I still struggle with some of the production on this album and the relentless slow gloom hanging over it, the highs are way up there for me. Useless, Home, and Insight are classic Depeche tracks. This is the 2017 reissue. Gatefold. Also have this version. It's a bootleg, just for fun. So we've officially reached the halfway point. Good job. Get yourself a good snack, we're almost there. Number 8, Speak and Spell. So this might be controversial, but I absolutely adore the naive synth-poppy sound of this record. As is the case with many debut albums, after early demos and live performances, the band had a stacked collection of tunes ready to record. Daniel Miller can't be understated as the 5th member of the band at this time. Working as producer with the group at Blackwing Studios, he would reinterpret and program some of their early arrangements through his ARP 2600, leading to these monstrous loops and arpeggios on tracks such as the still classic Photographic. Released in 1981, Speak and Spell was a melting pot of the band's influences such as the recent groups The Human League, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, as well as the legendary Kraftwerk. Although it provided them their timeless hit Just Can't Get Enough, the album really shines for me on some of the deeper cuts. So I already mentioned Photographic, which is ground zero for the synthwave subgenre and a dance floor filler to this day, but I really enjoy Puppets and Tora 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 as well. While 9 of the tracks were written by founding member Vince Clarke, Martin would include 2 of his own, including Any Second Now Voices, as an early indication of where the mode would go next. Initially used as an instrumental tour intro, to this day this gorgeous ballad has never been performed live, despite Moby claiming otherwise. Moby claims a lot of questionable things. It's my Canadian pressing from 1981. This includes Dreaming of Me, which wasn't on the UK version. 1981 Spanish edition. It's on RCA. 2017 reissue, signed by Mr. Vince Clarke. It's a gatefold. Nice heavyweight vinyl. At number 7, A Broken Frame. Released in 1982 as a 3-piece, their sophomore album has grown on me over the past few years. Again, working with Daniel Miller, A Broken Frame would see Martin Gore take over as the primary songwriter, taking the band into darker territory. Although you wouldn't know it from some of the lighter weight fare here, such as the track See You, which Martin wrote when he was about 16, or the horrendously cheesy The Meaning of Love. At this time, the group would also put out an ad for a little help on stage and enlist Mr. Alan Charles Wilder before embarking on a media blitz that would include teen magazines and a few ill-advised TV performances, including one German program that had them sing while holding chickens. Heading back into the studio, the band was set on proving themselves as a 3-piece and put their heads down with Miller to record Martin's deep back catalog of Herman and the Worms tracks. Nothing to Fear is a gorgeous piano-led instrumental that would inform later Martin instrumentals such as Agent Orange. Monument is a weirdly wonderful track that would go on to inspire groups like Gus Gus, Royskop, and The Knife. Greek synth-pop duo Marceau would record cover versions of the entire Broken Frame album, complete with extended mixes and versions of B-sides such as the underrated Now This Is Fun. Look for their cover in the description. If you haven't heard it before, you're welcome. The Sun and the Rainfall is this album's wonderfully melancholic masterpiece. Fletch was quoted as saying, "I'm a big believer that songs that are at the end of albums always get lost. And that's one particular really good song that I think gets lost because it's at the end of the album." The late Brian Griffin's award-winning cover would also contribute to Depeche Mode's embrace in Europe, particularly the Eastern Bloc countries. It was all just coming together. This is my 2017 reissue. Like all of them, it's a gatefold, inner sleeve, Number 6, Break Out the Cranes, Construction Time Again. 1983's Construction Time Again would see a lot of firsts. Following the Get the Balance Right one-off single, it would be Alan Wilder's first album as a full creative member of the band. It would be the start of their Berlin trilogy of albums, working with Gareth Jones. And it would be the start of the band experimenting with sampling techniques. With Martin's pool of old songs depleted, the band would sit down before beginning Construction Time Again and decide on how they wanted to approach things. Working at the legendary Hansa Studios where Bowie and Iggy left their mark, Gareth would have them play their sounds through big amplifier in these giant rooms and get these huge sounding atmospheres. Inspired by the urban malaise atmosphere of 1980s Berlin, they brought Gareth's Stellavox recorder out to factories and construction sites and would record themselves hitting stuff with drumsticks and hammers off every piece of metal or piping they could find. They would then assemble these found sounds on the synclavier, the cutting-edge sampler of the time. Alan Wilder was quoted with saying, "You can take the purest voice in the world and fool around with it digitally until it's the most evil, monstrous sound. Or you can take a moose fart and make it something beautiful." This level of experimentation would lead to some happy accidents, such as the intro to the single Everything Counts, coming about when the sampler glitched and played the sound back incorrectly. Alan would contribute 2 industrially tinged songs in 2-Minute Warning and The Landscape is Changing, and More Than a Party and Told You So are great forgotten live favorites from this time. This is my 1983 original press from Canada. Sire label, 2017 reissue, inner sleeve, nice heavyweight vinyl. At number 5, Some Great Reward. Leveling up once again. Satisfied with the increased credibility and culture of experimentation Berlin had provided them, the Basildon Boys returned to Hansa Studios, joined by Gareth Jones for their 1984 album. Pushing their production techniques even further and inspired as much by Germany's Einstürzende Neubauten and UK's Test Department, as well as Steve Reich and Philip Glass. Gareth Jones said, "We didn't want to be wimpy. We wanted to make powerful, strong records with a lot of atmosphere." On People Are People, the band would set up a giant PA system in Studio 2 with cables running to multiple rooms, sending different drum sounds to entirely different spaces to be recorded, shaking the entire building. Elsewhere, the track Somebody is stripped bare to nothing but an acoustic piano, accompanied by a vocal reportedly performed by Martin, stripped down to the nude. Lie to Me is one of the strongest, funkiest songs Martin had written up until this point, with its great groove and intersecting counter melodies. Alan would start to double down in the studio to refine songs such as Lie to Me and others. On Master and Servant, he worked tirelessly with Gareth Jones to try to make the song as big sounding as Trevor Horn's production of Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. In the process, they'd accidentally left the snare drum sound off of the final chorus, although it's hardly noticeable. With sessions running late, Alan, Gareth, and Daniel would be left behind to finish the record while the rest of the group would jet off on holiday. Some Great Reward is a much stronger, tighter, and more realized vision, first attempted on Construction Time Again. My personal favorites on this would be Lie to Me, the Alan written If You Want, and the closer Blasphemous Rumors with its clever use of sampling. 1984 Canadian Sire Press, 2017 reissue, OG 1984 Japanese pressing complete with Obi, German Platt im Farbigen vinyl. Number 4, Music for the Masses. The album title that was a tongue-in-cheek spoof of the classical record, Music for the Millions. On this album, the group that felt they were forever destined to be a cult band who could never quite crack the mainstream would get even closer. This album lifted them yet again, particularly in America, in no small part due to their relentless touring, as documented in the 101 film. For this record, the band felt they needed some fresh input, especially after driving Daniel Miller to his wit's end on Black Celebration. They enlisted Dave Bascom after the success of his work on the Songs of the Big Chair album with Tears for Fears. The first thing the public would hear is the hit Strangelove, although on the record, it's far more slowed down and moody than its single counterpart. Other songs too wouldn't really hit their potential on the record. Sacred's cassette monitor mix had a few catchy melodies and energy that Dave Bascom felt didn't fully get captured in the final version. The sequencing is also a bit front-heavy, with the stretch from Little 15 featuring a fairly slow pace alternating between drum and drum-less songs. Despite these niggles, the highs are truly soaring on this record. Along with The Things You Said and Behind the Wheel, for me, Never Let Me Down Again is this album's best track and a timeless Depeche anthem. Soaring anthemic chorus? Check. Driving John Bonham drum sample? Check. Catchy intro that came about from another sequencer error? Check. 1987 Sire Records Canadian press? 1987 Hungarian pressing. Talked about this one in one of my recent vinyl haul videos. Love that center label. Getting into the top 3, at number 3, it's Black Celebration. Released in 1986, after initial sessions at Westside and Genetic in London, Depeche would return for the third and final time to Hansa in Berlin with Daniel Miller and Gareth Jones, determined on scaling an even higher peak. Aiming to live the album by meeting every day in the studio, the resulting claustrophobic sessions would get tense, with Martin storming off when receiving the feedback from Daniel that, quote, "The songs aren't good enough, there aren't any singles, and it'll never get played on the radio." Daniel and Gareth aimed to have the album sound like one big cohesive environment rather than a collection of songs. They would push things further in terms of sampling, use of reverb, and song arrangements. The Porsche ignition and motorbike idling forming the rhythm of Stripped. The Churchill sample in the moody intro to the title track Black Celebration, and how it flows into Fly. Despite their evolving sound, the UK press would continue to antagonize the group. Melody makers Steve Sutherland wrote of Black Celebration, quote, "Pussycats desperate to appear perverted in an escape from the superficiality of teen stardom." In America, their label Sire would not release the single Stripped, opting for its B-side But Not Tonight. Despite its more experimental sound, Black Celebration would become an instant fan favorite and would be reappraised as a hugely influential critical peak for the band. Such a great collection of songs, it's hard to choose, but my personal favorite standouts are the title track and It Doesn't Matter 2 and Stripped. 1986 Sire pressing with that wretched But Not Tonight as the closing track. Music on vinyl reissue. Love the embossed symbols on this one. Got some catching up in the center there. I guess it did make an appearance after all. Album ends with New Dress. I actually love But Not Tonight, and that was my closer when I was growing up. So in my mind, that's still the closing track. When I reveal this, you're gonna know what my number one is. At number two, Songs of Faith and Devotion. This album was a living nightmare for Flood, and sadly for Alan Wilder, as it would lead to his departure from the band. Wanting to move things on from Violator, they would incorporate more guitar, real drums, and sampled bits of performance, moving their sound away from metronomic to more organic. This album has a killer set of songs, especially Walking in My Shoes, In Your Room, and I Feel You. The influences of So Fad would be heard on future records from Gary Newman, Massive Attack, Nine Inch Nails, and others. Although they've tried to repeat this sound with multiple records over the decades, this is Depeche Mode's singular Delta rock record. It accomplishes the remarkable task of taking previously unheard blues and rock classics and marrying them with slightly broken and twisted electronic music, the perfect melding of machine and rock. The production reaches a height that, for me, nothing else by any band in any genre has touched, even the next record on this list. There is so much packed into every second of these tracks. Listening to the 5.1 mixes that separate the elements or playing around with the parametric EQ gives you a peek behind Flood and Alan's Wizard's curtain. But still, there's something in the character, some secret sauce I still haven't figured out. When I met Alan in 2010, I told him, you know, when I listen to the chorus of Walking in My Shoes, there's this interesting sonic character, almost like something tonally happening. I don't know if it's being put through a valve or something, because, you know, Daniel Miller would always tell them, if you want something to sound good, lads, put it through a valve. And Alan's response was, we recorded it like crap. You're hearing faults in the master. To which I cheersed him with the, well, here's to another terrific happy accident. Special edition CD and DVD set. This is where you can hear those 5.1 mixes to see what I'm talking about. Original Mute Records UK pressing from 1993. Inner sleeve. And the reissue. So, here we are. Number one, Violator. The perfect record at the right time. Critically acclaimed, monstrously commercial, fan favorite. This isn't a perfect album, this is the perfect album. Extensive books have been written about it. You really should check out Halo. Fresh off the back of his work with U2, Flood would shack up in Logic Studios Milan and Pook Studios in Gerlev, Denmark with the band. From somewhere, Martin had just written his greatest collection of songs, which were presented in this raw, loose, sketched out form. This would allow the band to fully experiment with melody and arrangement, tempo and rhythm in ways they hadn't previously. Stomping on flight cases for a huge sounding beat, turning somber ballads into Pet Shop Boys-esque dance floor hits, and not being afraid to throw things out and start again when their instincts told them to. There are so many influences and tributes to other great artists on here, whether it's David Lynch, Fleetwood Mac, Elvis, Pink Floyd, and of course Kraftwerk. They even got François Kevorkian, the perfectionist who mixed Electric Cafe, to lend his skills here, spending hours mixing a hi-hat until it was just right. Hell, even Fletch would offer some input, lending his voice as a sample during the interlude between Enjoy the Silence and Policy of Truth, shouting, "Crucified!" It really was this perfect combination of right place, right time, an excellent collection of songs, a band at the top of their game but still eager to go higher, open to throw out preconceptions and experiment or tinker where arrangements could go, the best producer, best mixer, best visual director, I could go on. In January of 1991, while in the 6th grade, I found myself on an overnight school trip to one of these outdoor education centers in the woods. Walking through the dormitory halls at night to my room, I came upon this cassette on the ground. As a 12-year-old with synesthesia, the textures and timbres of the intricately layered melodies were mesmerizing. Violator opened up my mind to the possibilities in songwriting, composition, production I never thought possible, and to this day I have yet to hear anything that comes close. One of the curses of learning about music production is a lot of the magic is lost listening to a song. Most albums I give a focused listen to, I can tell you what's going on in the mix and how they created the sounds and the sonic character. SoFad and Violator still have big sections that mystify me. Their sonic architecture are enigmas I return to again and again, and I revel in them. This is my original pressing from 1990. '90 Italian pressing. Music on vinyl reissue. So that's gonna do it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I've got several ideas for more fresh and unique Depeche Mode videos. You can tell I'm a fan. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss those. Do you agree with my ranking? Where would you have personally placed these albums? Let me know down in the comments, or tell me how you discovered this amazing band. Thanks for watching. You can see more of my videos right here. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you guys in the next one.